The world is filled with books, millions of books, and they keep on getting produced, more written all the time. Today we are surrounded by some very old books. Here I am in the rare book room of Concordia Seminary Library, some books that date back to the time of the printing press and even before that. So we have all these books in the world, all vying for our attention. Some of them claiming to have authority, claiming to be significant, things that we should listen to and follow. And so we're faced with the question, what makes the Bible different than all these other books? Well, maybe it helps to do just a little bit of statistical comparison. And I'm going to hit you with a bunch of numbers here, but I think it might help just to kind of give you some perspective on where the Bible sort of fits with other ancient literature that we have. Obviously, there are a lot of old books, and we have them in translation, and people still study them and read them. I'm going to give you just a few examples. Homer's Iliad was written in the Greek language, and he wrote the Iliad in 900 BC. We know that just from what we know about Homer. So the Iliad is written in 900 BC. The oldest copy of the Iliad that we have dates from 400 BC. So that means there's 500 years lost between when Homer actually wrote it and the copy that we have of it. We have of Homer's Iliad in existence about 643 copies. Most of them are not nearly as old as the 400 BC. Most of them date into the AD time period. And of all those different copies, they agree in most part, but there's actually 5% of the Iliad that's kind of in question. We're not sure exactly what Homer said because there's discrepancies among the texts. Now, another comparison which comes closer to the time of the New Testament would be Caesar, Julius Caesar. He wrote the Gallic Wars, telling about his fighting up in France. And in the Gallic Wars, he wrote this down in about 50 BC. Of Caesar's Gallic Wars, the oldest copy that we have dates from 900 AD, 950 years between the time of Caesar's writing and the copy that we have. And we have of Caesar's Gallic Wars only 10 ancient copies. Only 10. Now, we come to the New Testament. The New Testament was written somewhere between 40 AD and 100 AD. And it was written not by one single man, but by a number of different men. Some what we call prophets, some apostles, some who were just friends of the church. And maybe as many as a dozen different authors or more had a hand in the New Testament. All of them came together to put together this one book, this unified story of the New Testament. So it was written between 40 AD and 100 AD. The oldest copy of the New Testament that we have dates from 125 AD. Now think about it. That means that within 25 or 50 years of its writing, we have a copy that old. That's astounding. Now the other thing to think about is we have of the New Testament written in Greek, we have 5,000 Greek copies of the New Testament. 5,000. And of all those 5,000 copies, you'd think there'd be some disagreement, some discrepancy. But in fact, less than 0.5% of the lines actually are in some sort of question. And of that 0.5% of discrepancy, no serious teachings of the church are ever called into question. That's pretty amazing. That's pretty reliable. And of course, the Old Testament dates back even further into the time before Christ. So the Bible is a very old book, and a very reliable book if you put it by any kind of standards measuring ancient texts versus what we know about them. And in fact, you should realize that Homer's Iliad is the best attested ancient document next to the Bible. The Bible, 5,000 copies. Homer's Iliad, 643. The Bible, within 25, 50 years of writing. Homer's Iliad, 500 years. There's no comparison. But the thing I want you to think about really today is the fact that perhaps this is not even the point. The Bible is an old book, no doubt. It dates back to around 100 AD. Old Testament even older than that. But how old it is not the point. There are older books. And other people say, well, the real point of the book is the wisdom that it has. A lot of wisdom packed in there, no doubt about that. But there's wisdom other places too. Confucius, Buddha, they wrote some interesting things or things written about them that they said. And there's a lot of wisdom there, to be honest. So there's wisdom to be found other places beside the Bible. So maybe the wisdom of the Bible isn't the point, and I would argue it's not. So what makes the Bible different than all these other books? I would say it's not because it's older or better or wiser or even more reliable. While all that might be true and you can make a case for that, and others have made strong cases for all those things, that's really not the point. The point is that the Bible is important because the Bible shows us Jesus Christ. That's what makes the Bible different than any other book. Because the Bible is the story about Jesus Christ. Last time I talked to you about what makes Jesus so significant and why he is the way to God. Well, the Bible becomes very important for us because the Bible is the record, the account of Christ, who is the way to God. The God who exists has shown himself to us in Christ, and the Bible tells that story. It's the narrative, the story about Jesus. That's what makes it so special. You see, when it gets right down to it, Christian faith is not based on the Bible. It's based on Christ. And there's a big difference because there are some people who seem to think that it's sort of like a battle of the books. You've got the Quran, and you've got the Upanishads, and you've got Confucian literature, and then you've got modern scientific literature. And so people seem to think that, oh, and then there's the Bible, of course. Well, now we'll just kind of weigh out the different options. Which one is the most convincing? Which is the book I'm going to follow? As if they're going to sort of pick and choose among a buffet of books. And in this room, you get that idea. A lot of books. Which one's right? It's not that way at all. The fact of the matter is, you don't get to choose. You're not going to choose your reality. You don't get to choose which book is going to norm your life. You don't get to choose what's going to be true. What's true simply is. The Bible tells us about what God has done for us in Christ. It's the reality. You don't get to say, oh, I think Darwin has a better take on things, or I think that maybe Freud had a better take on reality, or maybe I like the Quran better. It's more profound. It's not the point. The point is Jesus Christ. He came and claimed to be God in the flesh. And he did for us what no man could do, what only God could do. He brought us God's reality, God's truth, God's forgiveness. And the Bible tells us about Christ. The center of our faith is not the Bible. The center of our faith is Jesus Christ. And because he has done everything for us and has given us his record in the words of the Bible, that's why we trust the Bible. And that's why we look to the Bible for our direction, helping us to know the witness about Christ. You see, Christ himself is God speaking to us. And then there are witnesses who tell about Christ. Eyewitnesses who saw him, walked with him, lived with him, the disciples. And they told that story to others, and to others, and to others, right down to the present time. Myself, I'm the result of people telling me the story. Before I ever read the Bible, my parents told me the story. My pastor told me the story. As I got older, then the Bible confirmed it and shaped and directed it. But the story is simply there. That's the center of everything. Our faith then, the faith of a Christian, does not, like as I said, rest on the Bible, but it rests on Christ. And that makes a big difference because we don't have to argue about who's got the best book or what belongs in the book, because what belongs in the book is what points to Christ. And the reason the Bible is the book above all books is because that's the book that tells us the story of Christ. You don't go looking for God's truth. I know that's going to sound a little odd, but you really don't. It's not like we have to sort of say, which truth do I want to accept? Do I believe Darwin and his account of things, or do I accept what the Bible has to say? No, God's truth finds us. God encounters you in Christ. He brings the reality of who you are, his creature, and what he's done for you. And then you begin to realize everything falls into place. And what the Bible tells you simply confirms everything you're experiencing and everything you're knowing, that God is reality, Christ is reality, and the Bible tells me that. So, what makes the Bible different from every other book? What makes it different is Jesus Christ. It's the story of Christ. That's what makes it different, and that's what makes it significant for our lives.